I merely blinked as I processed the information given to me. This man was my guardian? I guess it made sense considering he did just save my ass. "How did you know I was here?" I asked. The hooded figure chuckled slightly.
"As your guardian, I always know where you are."
I didn't know whether to have found that charming, or just downright creepy. Either way, his knowledge of my whereabouts saved my life.
"I do, however, have a question for you."
The guardian took a step closer to me, and bent down, his eyes leveled with mine.
"What on earth are you doing back here?"
I couldn't help but stare at his eyes, that appeared gray underneath his hood. He too was staring at me, but more intensely. It was as if he was trying to peer into my inner thoughts. I felt my face heat up, and rapidly blinked to drive away my rushing emotions. I don't know," I blurted out. "I just felt drawn to this area." The guardian nodded his head.
"I see."
He simply stated.
"Well, regardless of your reasons, I must get you out of here. I'm positive that those phantom agents were not the only ones going after you."
With that, the guardian stood up and held his gloved hand in front of me. Cautiously, I took hold of it, and he effortlessly brought me back to my feet. I self-consciously rubbed my clothes as I wiped off imaginary dust. I desperately tried to look away from the guardian's increasingly uncomfortable stare. Reflecting on his earlier remark, I turned around and narrowed my eyes at the guardian. "Wait a minute," I started. "This was a classified mission. How can I be certain that you're really my assigned guardian?" The man just stood there and met my suspicious gaze with one of careful consideration.
"The secret directors assigned me to protect you. They also informed me of the events that had occurred in the days previous to meeting you. I understand your suspicion of me, Agent Moore. I assure you, though, I'm not here to harm you."
The guardian turned away from me and picked up my gun. He then walked back to me and placed the object in my cold hand. He seemed to have noticed my inconspicuous shivers, for he took off his trench coat and gently placed it around my thin shoulders. His considerate gesture caught me by surprise. I never knew guardians were so concerned about their subjects' well-being. Perhaps mine was an exception. The man merely continued to observe me carefully, and I found myself staring back. There seemed to have been a hint of blue in his eyes. The color almost swirled in the lighter background. I blinked and pressed the coat closer to me, as I used it as an excuse to look away. The shivers I attempted to hold back invaded my body more aggressively. The guardian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he turned around.
"Come on,"
he said. I merely blinked. "What?" I replied dumbly. I could have sworn that I saw the look of amusement pass on his face.
"You prefer to stand here in the cold?"
he asked teasingly. I mentally debated on whether or not I should go with the guardian. He did just save my life, yet I knew nothing about him. For the moment, he seemed friendly and honorable enough. I still would keep an eye on him, just in case. With my mind made up, I followed the guardian to a secondary street, where a sleek black sedan was parked. The sight slightly annoyed me, as I recalled my own car being destroyed in my last mission. As a gentleman, the guardian opened the door for me. I raised an eyebrow at his show of manners, but got in nonetheless. He jogged around the car and got in as well. He placed the key into the slot, and the car bolted to life with a quiet purr. The guardian drove smoothly and avoided the congested New York traffic. We arrived shortly at my apartment building. As he pulled to a stop, I glanced at the guardian. "Thanks for the ride," I said.
"Anytime."
he replied. I nodded and got out of the car. As I closed the door, a thought passed through my mind. The guardian was about to set the gear to drive when I leaned on the passenger side's open window. "Wait!" The guardian stopped what he was doing and looked at me. A slight flush passed over my face as I opened my mouth to speak, yet nothing came out. "Way to go, Rachel. You couldn't just keep your damn mouth shut, huh?" Defeated, I merely bit my lip and shook my head. Finally, I looked up at him. "Thanks for saving my life." The man nodded his head. He waited for me to lean back before he accelerated down the street. I stood there for a few minutes as I took everything that just happened. I scolded myself for having these mixed feelings. For God's sake, Rachel, get a hold of yourself. I shook my head, and then looked down, and realized that I forgot to return the Guardian's coat. I slapped my forehead in annoyance. I grumbled to myself as I made my way inside the building, and arrived at my apartment. A shower was in call.